So I was invited to talk about, well, the title of the talk is A Journey Outside of Academia. And it's not a journey understood as me giving a landscape of things that I've been doing with artificial intelligence in other fields. That's not at all what I'm going to do here. I'll present some examples if you're interested, but it's a journey understood that my personal journey from an academic path to a data science career. Okay, so maybe let me give you a bit more context. So, as I don't know if many of you, I studied physics. I did my PhD on particle physics phenomenology at the University of Barcelona. I moved on with a postdoc, and at a certain point, I decided to move. And then, since a few years, I've been working as a data scientist in different companies and different projects. So, before starting to talk about that transition, maybe let me give you a few disclaimers. The first one is that, well, probably I should have called that my journey, in the sense that what you're going to hear is based on one data point, right? So the bias is terrible. I have no way to validate that any of the decisions that I've made are good or bad. So just take what I say with a pinch of salt and for what that matters. Also, that's also the reason why I thought after the invitation that it doesn't make sense for me to speak generically about topics on the transition, because I wouldn't know how to do that. So I'll use my transition like almost chronologically to talk about things that surprised me, that I had to confront, things that all the people doing that transition have shared as stressful points or things that they thought were prejudices that were different, all those sort of things. But also, it's unfinished. So it's been only 5 years since I moved out of academia. So also take that for what matters. So I don't even know if the decisions that I've made are good or bad, because I do not have that perspective. And what else? The final disclaimer. Oh yeah, the talk has absolutely no end, in the sense that I don't have to show you any results or to give you a landscape of any particular thing. So I was hoping that you can help me to stop on places that you find more interesting, so that I do not spend the time talking about things that maybe are not interesting. Right? So hopefully you can stop me, ask questions about things, and we can have an interesting discussion about many prejudices that I think people have from academia, and then people from outside academia have about academia. Okay. Yeah, so maybe to give you a bit more context of what I did as a researcher. So I mostly work on phenomenology at the LHC, and that meant working with mean physics signals for different models, one particle, CISO, heavy neutrinos, and that was part of the work, of course, done in collaboration. I did in Barcelona with Juan Gonzalez Fraile, which I think that many of you probably know her. And then for a big part of my research career, we also worked on things related to effective Lagrangians. That was quite a hot topic after the Higgs discovery. And that I'm not so sure anymore if that's still a hot topic. But that involved usual things in phenomenology, right? I don't know how many of you here are working on these sort of things, or if you're coming from other fields. But that meant like computation, simulation, Monte Carlo, new signals, sampling, what else? And for sure, all the things regarding like likelihood analysis of the things, you know, some of the other parts, like likelihood analysis, finding significant regions, and so on. And what do I say? That okay. So when transitioning, probably one of the first things that I question myself is, okay, transitioning where? And also, I'll skip any comments about motivations for the transition, because I think that there are as many good reasons to stay in academia as there are good reasons to move out of academia. And I think that probably that's a personal thing, right? So I think it's a bit pointless that I thought about my personal ones. But yeah, when you decide that, okay, maybe you can try something different, of course, you're going to ask yourself, like, what could I do or what could I like to? To me, that was a combination of different things, for sure. Interest, if personal interest matter. And in my case, at the end, I was lucky enough that my interests were aligned with my skills, and skills coming from what I've shown on the previous slide. Some of them are hard skills that are very dependent on what you've done in your life as a PhD, as a researcher, and those are going to be different. But in my case, math, statistics, machine learning, computational, working with data, that was all what I was doing already, right? So it felt like a natural step. And that's maybe the most obvious thing to realize, but then also something that I don't know with perspective or if I was dumb or not, but when you are inside academia, you're surrounded by people like very similar to you, many PhDs, and I don't know if you lose perspective, but when you go out of academia, not everyone has a PhD, not everyone is a scientist, and not everyone doesn't even understand what's a science approach to a problem, right? And to me, that's really strongly attached to all the soft skills that you develop as researchers, right? And those are, I think, way harder to get, because you need years of researching and doing things to get those. And also it's harder to understand which are your soft skills that are going to be distinctive when you have to go to a market and fight for positions against some other people. And it's also hard to understand which are those, but it's even harder to communicate those to people which is not coming from your same origin, right? So yeah, anyway, yes, if you ever consider leaving, I'm talking about data science. I'll talk later about different positions in data science because the landscape is crazy right now. There are many different names and many different positions, but that can help you like pinpoint exactly where you would try to be impactful and have an interesting job. Okay, so what else? Yeah, support. The fact that you are hearing that this talk, I guess it means that you are already receiving support if you want to transition outside of academia, which is, I think it's really nice, it's really interesting. I don't know how much I've been evolved in the last 5 years, which is when I left, but that means that some things are better in that sense. I remember back when I did my transition, it's not that I was stressed about that, but I had many negative feelings about having to confront, or not to confront, but having to talk about me wanting to transition with the people that have more strongly pushed my career, right? They have given me recommendation letters, they have been my collaborators for years. And it felt a bit like abandoning, selling yourself. You can put many negative adjectives on that. I think now with the perspective, I was a bit stupid, because the people that most strongly support you now are going to be the same people that more going to strongly support you if you make the decision to leave. At least that was my experience. I'm very grateful for that. And I think that's shared by many other people that I know that have, some other people that I know that have done the transition. And I think that if that's not, I guess that's another question. Yeah, and that's not what you get that support, and it means that probably that the person is treating you as a tool, and then it's also not worth spending more time on that. That's one part of the support, and then the other part of the support, and I'm a bit of an introvert myself. Like I work on not being that way and talking to people more and more. But one of the things that surprised me at the beginning, and then I've seen that from the other side of the fence afterward, is that we have a community of people, not necessarily coming only from particle physics phenomenology, from physics, from other science fields, but most of the people do the transition. And people, my experience that people have always been really willing to speak to me, to give me advice, and to provide me information beyond what I have always been requesting them, right? So I was surprised. Well, I don't know if I was surprised by that, but I had never really thought about that. And then I realized, okay, that's what's happening. People is really supportive. So talk to people if you have doubts, if you want to chat, want to get advice, want to contrast things, talk about the opportunities, talk about what people are doing outside of academia, because you're really going to be surprised at how helpful people is and what to do. Yeah, I lost again. Okay.
Just press the on top of now
Well, I think what's coming next is communication. I'm going to talk about cultural differences because I guess that's one of the things that are more, that impact even more when you change from one field or the other. So for sure, one of the things that you have to adapt yourself is how you communicate things, particularly in many different senses, but particularly when it comes to at the beginning, you want to make a transition, you have to sell yourself. That's where it comes all the intrinsic analysis of who you are and what you can offer, but also there is a lot of adaptation that you have to make because you are no longer valued by the number of publications that you have or by the talks that you've given in international conferences. That all still matters in depending who you are applying to or who you are aiming to collaborate with, for sure. But you have to be realistic, and then you sometimes feel that you're making the sacrifice to remove your, the beautiful publication list that you've been building for years. All of a sudden, you have to remove it from your resume, from the CV. It may feel painful, but yeah, that's something that you have to do. You have to adapt that. And yeah, feel free to ask anything. I didn't want to say anything more specific about that because I don't think I've mastered that at all. But I've just being scientific about that. I usually try to approach that the same way I would approach a project, right? Study who you're applying to, make sure you understand which are the priorities, what you can offer, how you can reorder what you can do, and do that. Yeah, and then hopefully after all that, you may get your first position. What do you get? Yeah, about that, I've heard many things, and I read things before coming to the talk just to make sure that what people were talking about. I got the impression that certain people say that the first position was very complicated for a background like the background that I had, which I assume is similar to what you have. In my case, I was lucky enough that the first position I think was relatively easy. Of course, after spending some time on that. And about the first position, yeah, one of the things that I'd say is I think important, or very important in my case, negotiate. Yeah, don't forget about that. You are no longer in academia. Things may not be that tabulated or whatever. So that's important at the end, right? Because that's the quality of life or whatever. So do not forget that. Maybe if you're coming from a different culture, you forget about that, but then you're going to start like on a different level with respect to what you should. And I'm telling that because there is a strong variation on the scale of what you can earn, having the exact same profile, but having advertised yourself really. Okay, so I did that first transition. I got my first job. In my case, it was in a company working in the supply chain sector. At the end, I'm going to talk about a project. I haven't put any names on any of the slides or any collaborators. Everything is anonymous because of potentially confidentiality issues. So it's not very scientific in that sense. Anyway, I worked for a company that worked for another company that made technology. And one of the first projects that I had, well, the biggest first project that I had to face coming out of academia was related to what happens with technology after it's been sold, customer service. So they had this customer service. You call them, hey, I have a problem with whatever, my computer, with my phone. How do I fix that? There is a series of conversations. They send you like a spare hard drive, they test another thing, you call again, you're frustrated, whatever. And then at the end, they fix that issue. Okay, that was still pretty manual. And at the end of the day, they were having many troubles understanding, okay, why is that happening? Why are we sending so many spare parts? What is failing on our technology? And then there was all this big project that what they did have was the transcription of those codes in a lot of text. And then the cool idea of the project was to use this text and build an algorithmic solution that could extract like topic categorization, classifiers at the end, text classifiers, for many different things, right? For understanding what had been the technical issue behind the code, even the specific diagnosis code, whether the agent had fulfilled the compliance rules that they had to fulfill, and then understand which troubleshooting steps they will follow. And for sure, that was only the machine learning part, but at the end of the pipeline, that was to understand and save money out of having a process which is more efficient, and it was a higher customer satisfaction. Okay, so the culture was different for sure. It's a bit of a prejudice, but you're gonna find that now people may not care as much as about if what you are doing is right or wrong. We just have to deliver. I've never understood that because I don't understand what is meant by delivering if you are not doing the right thing, which means approaching things in a scientific way. But what I always found out, and I'm gonna repeat that several times, is that being a scientist pays off, and it paid off here, right? Because that big pipeline was built out of from an MVP that hadn't been done properly, no good generalization, no good validation. They had overpromised, and then funding for the whole project was spending on the real performance, and they were approaching the deadline. And yeah, sure, you didn't do things right, so then you're not going to meet your expectation. And this is why I got into a company, by the way, because they wanted someone that could help them with. And that from the cultural perspective, of course, it relied on adaptation. I had to understand that, okay, maybe they were not wanting at that point the best model, but they wanted something that would work fast, because they were approaching a deadline, and with the pipeline that they already have. No? And in that case, that meant, well, working a lot on identifying mislabeling data, which is not sexy or hot, but we had the resources. And then it meant also that was a tech-based problem, so you may end with lots of features. Because if you use vectorization, you can be talking about millions of features on the data, on your data set. So a lot of filtering, stacking learning, building something relatively simple, but that would work for the threshold that they had to reach, for the metrics that they had to reach. And then use good enough models, but that were not the most complex ones, because we didn't have the time to change the full pipeline. And it worked. We met the MVP, we got the funding for the full project, and then it meant that also meant that, well, at the end of the project, moved on to a more stable phase where we had the time to work on interesting NLP. This was before BERT or GPT-3, but it was still, full deep learning that we could do. Okay, so what else here?
Sorry, I have a question. I mean, this graph that you show is a very difficult thing that I always had in my mind, that in the private sector is you only have time to optimize your, I mean, you have a catalog of procedures, but you may not have time to choose whatever works the best because you have a deadline approaching. And then, right, so you are pressed because of the deadline, because of the client or whatever.
But you simply have a different balance that you have to be between accuracy metric, and the efficiency of your model.
Yeah, there is a compromise that you should.
You have to take a compromise, which I think is different from the compromises that we sometimes take in academia, right? Yeah. They are different, but that's something that you have to understand, and you adapt to that. And
then you feel that you could have done better if you had more time, something like that. This feeling is not torturing you, let's say.
No, not really, because if you meet the deadline, so at the end is that if someone may not care about the quality of the result, but there is someone paying that at some point maybe they did that, they externally validate what you are doing. So you cannot cheat, or you can cheat up to a certain moment, right? And then you have to leave at that moment. So, but still, it's not about getting the highest accuracy in that case. It's about meeting like the request that you have from whoever is paying. And in that sense, that other compromise get us to get the project approved and then have more time to develop the full thing. So if we had choose to try and do something fancy but not meet the deadline, then this would have never happened. So no, but that's the whole point. You have to adapt your mindset. But I don't think that is not something that we are already doing in academia, right?
If your paper is not finishing this week, it can be finished next month. So you will have.
Okay, yeah, the time thing maybe.
in that sense of a hard deadline, we hardly have it. I mean, we may have hard deadlines, but in general, it is just your own deadline that in your mind you want to finish the paper before holidays. But it's not the same thing.
No, here is different. Here, the constraints are usually time and resources.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to adapt to that. Okay, what I wanted to say here, yeah, sure. I was gonna say culture is different, but one of the things that I used to answer when people would ask me like, what's the biggest, what's the things that have surprised you the more when you make at that point when you make the movement from particle physics phenomenology to a data science position outside of academia? And I usually reply that what surprised me the most is that it wasn't that different. At the end, I was approaching projects the same way I would do my research on with whatever models were there, understand what was being applied for the type of problem that I had, understand what I could apply within the constraint that we had, time-wise or whatever, then make a hypothesis, build a model, validate your hypothesis, make some sort of external validation, and reiterate if that doesn't work. That's a very improvised way of describing maybe a scientific procedure, but that was, to me, it didn't feel that deep. Because I was working with different people, clients, in a more commercial setup. But it wasn't that different. The main difference is that you had to adapt to all those input constraints. Then, and I'll keep repeating that, science, still science, so it doesn't matter if you're applying that in research, academia, for particle physics, or if you are going to apply science to a problem which is framed within a commercial environment. The methodology is the same, and as far as I know, it's the only one I know to get to results that that have some sort of proof of validation, right? That you can rely on them and you can use them in general. Then what else? Okay, that nothing else. Spend time on that. Leadership is key. It is key in academia. It is key outside of academia. And yeah, to say that positively, I was coming from one of the best experiences of leadership that I had in Barcelona, and through my career, I've also had examples of very bad leadership experiences. So I'm lucky because that has given me a wide spectrum of what that means. Yes, if you face someone that has to guide you and it's unable to do so, and there is no way that you can change that, maybe it's not worth being there, so you can move on. And also then be a good leader once you understand what that is to the people that then you're gonna manage. Yeah, and then okay, purpose still matters. I put that by the way, the so-called real world, because I always found it a bit of a prejudice when I was in academia, right? Like when you do research, you are not doing real world problems. What the heck? That's not true, right? And especially if you're gonna contrast that to, is the real world working on projects to make a company earn more money? Because if that's the case, why is someone using that against people in academia? That makes absolutely no sense. And that doesn't mean that there is anything bad about that, but it's the way it is. But then I decided at that point that maybe those sort of projects were not exactly what I was looking for, and I decided to try to find a bit more of a purpose on what I was doing, because that was where I was coming from as well. Okay, and then in my case, I moved to a completely different sector, to a small company, a startup in international development. They were, well, I'll not give many details about that project. It all seems like another big NLP project, text. In that case, it was text. It was social media analysis, not for marketing, not for commercial. But anyway, it was text, social media, and then there had to be some sort of content analysis and network analysis, because whoever was paying for the project, they wanted to understand things about the context of the different content. One of the things that I want to say here, well, sorry if I'm not being like too linear. Many things to say here. First thing, I'm talking about cultural differences between academia, outside of academia. Well, those differences are as big as working for a mid-sized company, as I was working before, with a startup company. there are cultural differences, many. The same cultural difference that are between a research group in Barcelona versus a research group in Heidelberg as I was working. And that doesn't mean anything good or bad. Those are differences that you have to adapt yourself. But come on, if you understood quantum field theory, understanding that there are cultural differences that you have to adapt to shouldn't be that complicated. Also, the fact that it was a startup meant that you have to take many more roles as the specific role that you think that you're going to have. And that's, you learn a lot, but that can also be stressful. And I think it has a bad, to me, it had a good and a bad side. So the good side, I made good friends because we were so intensively working on things that at the end you get close to people, you enjoy working as a team, and then you make good friends and bright friends, more friends. On the other side, you get too invested, or I got too invested. And in that case, it was not my startup, so I got invested in something that I thought it was a bit different to what it ended up being. And that can create a bit of frustration, right? So you have a good side and a bad side. Okay, also, another thing I wanted to highlight from that pipeline, and coming back a bit to AI, that's again NLP, learning, machine learning, based on text. But that's only that way towards the advanced part of the project. So, and that's also why I particularly think data science is a very interesting field. Because when you go to a new project, you do not have a Kaggle competition with a description of your data set and exactly the machine learning tasks that you have to do and the metrics that you have to reach, and then you just do machine learning engineering, and that's it. That's certainly not what happens. So and everything that you have at the beginning is maybe a question, maybe well, more than a complaint, but you have a bit of a context of a problem which is painful to someone that's willing to pay for a solution. Maybe they give you indication of which sort of data that they can use, but how you build the way to get those answers is not framed that way since you start the project, right? So you have to think, okay, with the data that I have, which sort of solution I can build that meet what they want. It doesn't need to be machine learning. Usually, the simpler the better. It may end up being machine learning, of course, but then you're going to have to think, okay, with the data that I have, I want to do machine learning, has to be supervised. Who's going to do the labeling with the resources that the project has? Okay, we have very limited resources. For instance, the most interesting part of this project, from the technical perspective, was that we were trying to classify content in topics, and some of the topics were really rare or hard to find. How do you do that? Then you have a human person, which is an expert on an area, that's waiting to get enough text instances to label so that you can build a machine learning pipeline so that you can then make a prediction with the text that that person is not able to read anymore. Okay, you cannot give that person 2 million of text pieces and let that person label everything. That doesn't make sense. But if you're talking about something which is really rare, how do you find those text instances at the very beginning when you don't know anything and you? That was even in languages that I didn't speak and I don't speak yet, right? And then that was technically very interesting, and we succeeded by a combination of partial data sets, not related to what we were doing, but well, not exactly equal to what we were aiming to do, but related translations, back and forth, understanding how translations work, how you can use them in an automated way, understanding network effects, how you can use those to discover text of your topic. And I'm not going to give you more details, but the whole point is that whenever we end or we go to the part of making machine learning models to perform, that to me, that was the boring part. The interesting part had happened already before. And that made me a way to say that, okay, if you are going to do a transition, do not get too obsessed about wanting to do machine learning if you're going to do a transition to data science. Because in my experience no, it's not the interesting part of the project. It doesn't mean that there is nothing interesting here, for sure there is, but maybe on the balance of constraints that you have, you're never going to be able to have the time to build even another interesting neural network to solve that problem, because you first have to deal with everything that happened before and how that's Okay, so I'm gonna skip that one. That was we also did some project with computer vision. It was an interesting one. It was trying to identify cargo vessels for maritime security reasons. There's a lot of things that can happen if a vessel goes in the dark. A lot of money involved on that. And it involves segmentation. It involves dealing with satellite images, like computer vision. It's interesting, but maybe what I can say here, well, I think before talking a bit more about that example, let me just say that, yeah, that's very different. Sciences, still science, leadership still key, and purpose still matter. That's true from academia, outside of academia, and from outside academia to outside of academia, and then to when you change sector, you change company. That all still to me, it's still important. So in that sense, academia to outside of academia is not that special. Okay, about computer vision, I won't say anything else anymore about that, because maybe I can link that with the second set of things that I thought to be potentially interesting to you. So on that communication, you have to build a brand for yourself. At the end, you are no longer based on the people are not anymore looking at you by your inspired publication report or understanding who you are by your recommendation letter. So it means that you are there in the open world together with a lot more data scientists with probably many very different backgrounds to the background that you have. And then what I started with is, okay, I have to communicate, I have to build a brand of myself. How do you do that? You're gonna have many people telling you need to have open GitHub repositories so that companies can understand what you do, the quality of what you do. I've always found that a bit contradictory because, you know, a company may ask you for an open GitHub of the project that you've done, but that same company is going to tell you that you cannot publish it publicly. How are you supposed to escape that circle? I have no answer. I think that and seeing what you've been showing this morning, you have the advantage that if you are doing projects in academia with open GitHub, you have a lot of things came with respect to people that may have had a recent path in companies where they may not be able to share as much info. In my case, I do not have an open GitHub. I use GitHub for sure for projects and collaboration, but it's not open. I don't want to struggle with NDAs and conflict with data, for sure. But I found a good balance of, well, I don't know if I found a good balance, but what I try to do is sometimes when that's interesting for the company that owns the project I've worked for, then they maybe see that beneficial for me to write about the project, to move in details or whatever. And then that's what I do. And then, for instance, that project with satellite images, there is well, I have a post that you don't need to go and read it. But I mean, it certainly paid off. It's I don't know, 2-3 years old. It has 30,000 views with a high fraction of reads, or whatever that means. But to me, what that certainly means is that there is still people contact me and asking me about that project and how you do whatever, and they are interested about that. So to me, it's been a good way to yeah, build a bit of an image and get contact that may end on projects at the end of or after some time. Yeah, that's again. So maybe related to those skills, interests, the landscape of positions that are currently announced is, I mean, it's astonishing, it's confusing. You can see things more related to engineering, things more related to analysis, to business, I don't know, multi-software. That's confusing. You just have to understand what does all that mean, and then make sure that you understand what you are best at doing and what you want to do. But just to avoid ending on positions that are not what you want to, and then have a short reach. And yeah, which is maybe a bit related to when I talk to people that doing the transition, or that they ask me many times they ask me about like, okay, how is an interviewing process? How does that work for a position? I mean, there is no single answer for that. Like I have a few of them. I don't think they follow any particular pattern. Sometimes it's an interview and you are hired. Sometimes it feels like you are going to work for NASA and they keep asking you for coding exercises, presenting projects, giving ideas, another set of interviews, mathematical skills, programmatic skills. I'm not complaining about that, not saying that there is anything negative on that. In my what I do, and I've been lucky enough not to have interviews most recent time. If I don't understand the logic of the interview process, yeah, that's a warning mark for me, because maybe at the end I'm not applying to a position that I think I am applying, because if they are asking me to evaluate many skills that I don't think I'm going to use on my daily job, maybe that my daily job is going to be different. So that's why I try to pay attention to that, right? And then the other thing is that if that's not the case and it's just a company or whoever is interviewing you wasting your time, yeah, that also talks about how they're going to operate later. So do not, yeah, I don't know. I think that we can change that process and make it more efficient, but you have to be proactive on that. Okay. Yeah, so at that point, I've said I was still working pretty much as the same way as I did as a researcher. I was working for companies, but on a project basis. So I said like, okay, why do I do not try to do that on my own? And I did move. I started working as a freelance. That was almost 3 years ago now. And then on my own, to me, man, okay, I'll start trying to focus on a field that I always thought was of my interest. It was health in that case. I moved there. I was lucky enough to find, not the only one, but the biggest client that I have since then was on that sector. It's funny because I became a freelance and then I got into my longest professional relationship outside of academia since I moved outside of academia. So it's so funny because that's not what you would expect from a freelance perspective. And as here, I haven't said any details about what I've done before. So this is still talking about projects that are not finished. I'm not going to be able to say pretty much anything. But what I can say is that, okay, the first side involved recommendation systems. I think Irina, who is not here anymore, she said that, okay, technology companies, they are spending a lot of money on AI, but roughly 90% of that is on the commercial and the marketing side. Okay, that project was on that. It's on that side, right? On the commercial side of the spectrum. Nothing bad about that. My bet when I enrolled on that was, okay, but still it's a health company. So I know that they are doing some more AI things not related to health, related to health, but not related to the commercial side. So maybe I'm gonna end up working on that. And yeah, I survived enough time to be able to work on some other type of project. By the way, that recommendation system project may be on the commercial, the marketing side, but it's really interesting from the technical perspective. It really involves many different technologies. It's a dirty environment with lots of data sets from different types, with different nature. You have to build something that at the end is practical for whoever is going to consume that. So it doesn't mean that you cannot feel joy doing that. It's really interesting, just on the commercial side of the company. But then, whatever, I moved. I managed to collaborate on a project which was way more attractive when you talk about that. It was about using speech patterns, speech reports to detect neurological conditions, so neurological illnesses. That to me sounded very cool. The project was very cool. It was shorter than this project here, but still, somehow it paid off that initial bet. Because at the end, I couldn't doing things that they motivated me and that they didn't feel so commercial and they seem at the beginning, which is not bad, by the way. Okay, and also, yeah, the nice thing about all that also is that all the phones were prescriptive. That's a fancy word thing on data science. It means that it's not just about building a prediction, classification, or a regression, or whatever you use from the algorithmic side. Is that whatever algorithmic solution that you build, the prediction is not the important part. The important part is how you translate that prediction into a recommendation for someone to make a decision. And in that sense, the commercial project and the diagnosis project, they involve a lot of predictive work, regression, specifications of different types. But at the end of the day, what you have to build is, okay, that's the recommendation for, that's the next thing that you have to do, which means that you feel that it has or feel that it has like a way higher impact than just, you know, working on a kind of competition. Nothing bad about Kaggle, by the way. I think it's a really nice platform to learn. Okay, so also from the technical perspective, that involves learning and working with many things that I had not focused too much on for the project before, like supervised learning, a lot of to do with time series, which to me are one of those things that are more undervalued, because I think that they are pretty much everywhere, and then there is not really that much expertise on time series. So if you want to spend time on learning something which may be really useful and distinctive to your competition as data scientist, that's something that you could have a look at, because that's really everywhere. And then also causal analysis, with, you know, dealing with regression stuff and so on, coming from particle physics, you know, and those big discussions on frequencies and whatever, you always find it like funny. Okay, but also being on my own, I could work the way I wanted, in the sense of value-wise, and to me that's again that's science, right? So that's making sure that I am scientific about what I do, even if I'm a freelance, right? A lot of emphasis on hypothesis testing, on making internal and external validation. Not be careless about that, because I've seen in the past that when you face a project with that comes from a bad prototype with a bad validation in the back, then you start struggling with that and showing interpretability, which is also not topic in the eye outside of okay, and also that allowed me to start working on things related to sport, which presently is in field that I've been more interested in. And yeah, so that was probably 2 months ago. And then the only thing that was missing here, and that was nice, well, it was nice. It was not related to COVID, but I could remote work. I've always been flexible enough to decide when to work, like time-wise, and so I've been lucky about that. I don't know if there is a prejudice on that, to see that from academia, but that's not what I have experienced. But what I was missing for sure is working as a team. As a freelance, you are expendable. You are integrated in different teams. You move from one team to the other. You are not part of property. You are not part of the company. I missed that. And then I joined a like-minded individual a few months ago. Here, hello. Hector is also a physicist, particle accelerators in this case. He's been working for years at CERN. And we thought we have a shared view of how data science should be, or maybe that's not a way to frame that, but how to approach data science projects outside of academia, meaning to put more emphasis on science versus pretending that everything is packaging software. My experience is that doesn't work. And then we decided to join forces and start building a company, our own company with its own brand, Tech. Have a look there if you want. That's our motto: powered by data, driven by science. And this is what we've been doing for the last 2 months. So there's a lot of, now you are on your own. It means that I wish we could spend more time tuning neural network right now, but then there are many things that you have to do. You have to take care of, also as a freelance. You have to take care about cybersecurity, data regulations, your computational side, your relation with the tax agency, whatever. You are on your own. You can get support on that for sure. And you should rely on operators. But there are many more roles that you have to take from that perspective. But still, it pays off. In our case, we've decided out of our own interest, and also, well, we decided to focus on sports and health. That's also because, well, that's a bit on the image here, but pretty much everyone here, you know, Dembele is carrying a bed with a GPS, an accelerometer, a gyroscope, data monitor like every second of every exercise that he does. The same thing for Killian, right? He's having a watch here. On Earth is the same, right? He's having a bike computer on the bike that's measuring pretty much every exercise that he has. That means, well, and then there's obviously here data monitoring. The landscape of data that companies within health and sports, the landscape of data that they are recording is huge, but it's still not really understood what's all that data useful for or what they can exploit that. And then we are interested on problems that can be solved with that data. Sports and health, also interesting thing about that is that sure, there is a certain aspect that you can do better with elite sports because they are willing to they invest money, right? So they invest a lot of money in people like him, like them. So they have money to be better at what they do. They are the lead, but also there's more money involved in the general population and how we exercise and the impact that it has on our own health. And then there are many projects and entities interested on funding those sort of things. Yeah, so talking about sports, that's AI applied to, if any of you is interested in that, I'll not go in detail on that because I think I'm also running out of time. Yeah, so there is a lot that affects individuals, how individual performs, injuries, how they can better plan. As Irina said before, and some of you asked, how do you deal with nutrition for a least many things that you can solve or you can aim to solve with the data that they have or with the data that you can propose the day before. But there is also a team component on how you deal with strategies, how they have to position, the action that they have to make. They are linked with reinforcement learning. You can approach that from a predictive way, and that's been done already. Like there are notorious examples for like baseball, Moneyball, the 3-point revolution in the NBA. That's all based on data analytics. Yeah, and the good thing about being our own is that as long as we are economically sustainable, we can impose, or it's not that we impose, but we found our distinctive way of working, which is some focus on science, do not do things, black box them on a software package, sell them as if they are solving something when you haven't even validated that. We still understand that we have to approach that from a scientific way. And again, I think that may sound obvious to you because you are all within that world. But if you ever go outside, you'll see that people may be aggressively non-scientific. And the worst thing now is that people can be aggressively data-driven and still being not scientific, which is a bomb, right? So we can find a way to work that. And then also, we like a lot to engage with the people that has the real knowledge on their field, like medical doctors, performance teams, sports scientists, whatever, technology providers. So we believe that collaboration has to be transversal, and then we can improve that in the way that we approach science and programs. Okay, and that's pretty much everything. I have the tendency of working out a conclusion slide because that's what everyone is supposed to do. I've written 3 things here. So one is, to me, it's always been easier if I'm passionate about the project. But I think it's obvious. I struggle to find what I'm passionate about, so take that for what matters. But then it's also the other side. What I want to say here is that I don't think it's easier to be passionate about what you are doing being inside academia than outside of academia. I don't think there is a strong cut-off point between one area and the other. You can find really interesting stuff that's impactful, or whatever is your definition of what you can feel passionate about a project outside of academia. There are many fields, many interesting stuff in done. Deep learning, not deep learning, it doesn't matter. So if you care about being passionate because you feel that if you do it for the money, that's negative about you, that also doesn't mean that's a reason to stay in academia. Yeah, and also, same thing, if you're a scientist, once a scientist, always a scientist, and that pays off. Yeah, and the other thing is that, and I'm emphasizing that because I've said that I'm a bit of an introvert myself. Talk to people, support people, get their support, advise them, get their advice, and maybe, who knows, in a few years, we won't have this sort of focus. Moving outside academia and back to academia is going to be like a natural step of moving from supply chain to international development and back. But that comes from understanding each other, not from each other. And thank you for your attention. If you have any questions. one for this important talk. Really nice.